Charlas de la noche. Palabras con imagen. El análisis de los acontecimientos que influyen en nuestra vida con el periodista Francisco Durán Rosillo.
Durán Rosillo te saluda y los saluda a todos ustedes, su amiga María Celeste Raraz, para invitarlos a que se suscriban a mi canal de YouTube, María Celeste Raraz, tal como mi nombre, donde les informo todas las semanas sobre entrevistas que tienen un tema que ayuda a mejorarnos como personas y de paso son interesantes. Las pueden encontrar en mi canal de YouTube, así que los espero. Y se suscriben gratis.
National Border Patrol Council is backing this border bill. In a statement to Fox, Brandon Judd, the president of the Border Patrol Union, says the Border Act will codify it into law, authorities that Border Patrol agents never had in the past. This will allow us to remove single adults expeditiously and without a lengthy judicial review. While not perfect, the Border Act of 2024 is a step in the right direction and is far better than the status quo. Brandon Judd in Focus Now. I can only imagine that you've heard from a few people who may not agree with you. So I want to give you the chance to tell me in short words what you like about this bill, and then let's go back and forth a little bit with some of the weaknesses.
So there are plenty of weaknesses in here, but there's also a lot of strengths. And when you look right now what we're currently dealing with, this is a slow month, and we're dealing with 6,700 apprehensions on a daily basis. What this would do is it would cap it to where we couldn't take anything more than 5,000. Now, this does not say that we're going to release 5,000 people into the United States. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It says that we will hold single adults in custody. They will not be subject to release. And so that is a huge deterrent. That will deter an awful lot of people from crossing our borders illegally. We know that the main magnet that people cross our borders is because they're going to be released into the United States. Once you stop that magnet, you will stop an awful lot of people from coming. So although it's not perfect, it is a step in the right direction, and I would rather have the step in the right direction than nothing and consign me to what the status quo is.
All right, a couple of questions for you. First of all, the 5,000 is an average 7-day. Up to 8,500 would have to come across the border, which is more than what we're seeing right now per day in a slow month. So we're actually going to see 2,000 more people coming across potentially as long as the 7-day average stays around 5,000. My question for you is, do you know even how they got to those numbers?
I don't know how they got to those numbers.
Let me tell you. So the new asylum system would allow for 3,500 screening interviews per day. So what they're hoping is they don't want to get too far above that because they've got to keep close to that number. It would take relatively 2 to 3 years to get that new system in place. So we might have to live with what we've got for a while. I just put that out there. And I do want to point this out. For all of your men and women who need more help, the help will come in the form of these asylum interviews, but you still are tasked with the illegals coming across the border. Do you know what in this bill deals with them?
Yeah, so again, when you look at what we currently have to do, this bill allows Border Patrol processing coordinators to do the paperwork. We don't have to do that. We're able to deploy our resources to the field under this bill. We're no longer administrative assistants under this bill. So again, there's a lot of good. When we talk about 8,500 people, all we have to do is go back to December, and I will push back on that because in December we were taking 12,000 people into custody on a daily basis. Our 7-day average through the month of December has been well above 5,000, yes. And that is a slow month. So this bill puts a cap on what can come across. A cap is much better than allowing anything to come across because those numbers could skyrocket well above 12,000. So a cap is better than absolutely nothing.
I'm just wondering how you will enforce the cap, because if you could shut down the border for any period now, that would have been part of the conversation. And just so you know, inside those conversations, because because people are beginning to talk as they come out of those chambers now. Just so you know, that was an absolute no-go for Democrats. They wouldn't even discuss, can we just get a catch-up? That's what's missing to me in all of this. So one just quick last one about people sneaking across the border. The new way would have everybody get apprehended by Border Patrol, held in detention, screened at a much higher standard for asylum, and then deported back home. And I'm asking this. They've come across the border. Sneak is the word in the documents. They're criminals. So you're going to spend all of the resources, our taxpayer dollars still, rather than just deporting them back after they've broken the law. They're going to be, according to the plan, plenty of places legally still where they can go across the border. I'm trying to get an idea of how this immediately helps you, because 3 years from now is a really long time, Brandon.
Yeah, it is. But what this does is
3 months from now is a long time, by the way.
Harris, it is, Harris. But what this does is it ties any future president's hands. So if we have another president like Joe Biden, this will ensure that he doesn't do what he's currently doing. That is better than the status quo. Again, I'm going to look at this. Is this bill better than the status quo? And it absolutely is. Nobody can argue that. Nobody can argue that it's not better than what we currently have. And so if it's better than what we currently have, why wouldn't I support it? Obviously, I'm going to do that because it gives us border security measures that we don't have, that we've never had. And we need those border security measures to counteract a president like Joe Biden.
So what does it do for a president like a Trump or a Republican to get into office? I mean,
it doesn't tie their hands at all.
Perhaps if that were the case, you would get these numbers to be even lower. So
Harris, it doesn't take away any executive authority. So if President Trump...
Well, if that's the case, why can't we just use that now? Why can't we use the laws that are on the books now?
But he won't, so why not tie his hands with law? That's what laws do.
Why do you think he'd follow the laws coming that you want to see changed if he won't even follow the laws that are on the books right now? If he won't enforce what he's got in front of him?
The Supreme Court in 2023 said that he has the authority to release people. So we can argue that he shouldn't release people. But our
he also
own court
could shut
system,
the border down right now.
Harris, absolutely. But this law ties his hands. This law doesn't allow the Supreme Court to come in and say that he can release people. This law says that if you're single adults, you will be held in custody. It ties his hands, and it will tie any future president's hands. So, of course, I will support that. It does not limit
Well, it's mainly
Trump's
for
authority
Democrats,
under
because
executive.
Republicans see the issue very differently. I don't know if we have time to run this, so I'll just read a little bit of it. Arizona Border County official Jonathan Lyons with this message to Congress on the Senate bill. Do not vote yes on this bill. It's a starting point. Sit down with the Freedom Caucus. Sit down with all interested parties and establish what needs to be done as a baseline, which is shutting the border down right now. Brandon, you and I have known each other a long time. You know how much I support the Border Patrol.
You do.
Whatever goes forth has to be much better immediately.
Harris, we're not going to get much better immediately, so I'm going to take those incremental steps. If this were going to tie Donald Trump's hands, I would be opposed to it immediately. It doesn't. It doesn't tie any good administration's hands.
So why do you think he's against it?
I have no idea. I haven't spoken with him about it. If he has specific issues, let him air those issues. I will give the positive points in this bill. There are negative points. But if we don't even let this bill come to light, if this bill doesn't even go to the floor, we don't even get amendments. And that's what everybody's talking about. Everybody's talking about killing it before you're able to even offer amendments. That's wrong. Let's have the discussion, look at the bad points, keep the good points, but look at the bad points and give amendments to it.
What I like about what you're saying is everybody needs to read it. And
they do. They really do.
It's 370 pages. It's worth it because the areas where it falls short in dealing with, we didn't even get into gotaways. I mean, this is a conversation that would take you and I, who know each other well, hours to get through after reading that document. I appreciate your time in debating some of the weak spots with me. And the president is set shortly to talk on this. We'll watch it together, hopefully. Thank you, Brandon.
Hola, amigos. Bienvenidos una vez más a Charlas de la Noche, Palabras con Imagen. En pocas palabras, los demócratas están prostituyendo la frontera. Y todo indica a que muchos republicanos conservadores, tanto gobernadores como Greg Abbott de Texas y muchos legisladores, senadores, quieren esperar a Donald Trump a que resuelva de manera definitiva el problema de las mafias que inducen indocumentados como drogas dentro de los Estados Unidos, y que aparte, después de que vimos la paliza que le pusieron a 2 policías en Nueva York y después de que vimos cómo andan robando en las calles de la Gran Manzana, pues ya la población norteamericana ha cambiado sus puntos de vista de acuerdo no a la inmigración. Estados Unidos seguirá siendo un país de inmigrantes, más bien a este tipo de inmigración inducida por dictaduras como Venezuela, Nicaragua, Honduras y México. Todo apunta a que ha sido un desastre este tópico de las caravanas, inventado por la esposa de Marcelo Ebrard Casaubon, quien, de acuerdo a un periodista y ex embajador mexicano, el hecho de que haya recibido Marcelo Ebrard un reconocimiento en el gobierno de Honduras le hace perder la ciudadanía mexicana. ¿Sí? Tal como lo escucho. Me mandaron un reportaje publicado en Milenio Televisión. Vamos a ver si lo puedo rescatar para que lo vean.
Sin ataduras presenta Ebrard perdió la ciudadanía mexicana, por Agustín Gutiérrez Canet. Marcelo Luis Ebrard Casaubon perdió la ciudadanía mexicana el 27 de enero de 2024 por no solicitar en tiempo y forma el permiso para aceptar y usar la condecoración de la Orden Francisco Morazán en grado de Gran Cruz Placa de Plata, conferida por la presidenta de Honduras. La Constitución Política de los Estados Unidos Mexicanos, máxima ley de México, es muy clara. El artículo 37, apartado C, fracción tercera de la Constitución Política establece: la ciudadanía mexicana se pierde por aceptar o usar condecoraciones extranjeras sin permiso del Ejecutivo Federal. Ebrard aceptó y usó la condecoración hondureña antes de solicitar el permiso al Ejecutivo Federal. El permiso se solicita antes, no después, de recibir la condecoración. La solicitud de Ebrard fue extemporánea, pues fue enviada el 29 de enero a la Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores, 2 días después de que denuncié la violación constitucional por parte del ex canciller en un post en mi cuenta de X. Al día siguiente, el 30 de enero, la Dirección General de Protocolo de la SRE, encargada de tramitar las solicitudes, expidió el permiso a Ebrard cuando ya había aceptado y usado la condecoración de Honduras. La ley no es retroactiva. Resulta una burda mentira de los voceros de Ebrard afirmar que el trámite se realizó en forma, pero tarda un tiempo, cuando tratan de ocultar que el permiso lo recibió rápidamente, en menos de 24 horas, pero solicitado tardíamente. Ver el mensaje citado por la talentosa conductora de Milenio TV, @Elisa Alanis en X. Es imperdonable que un ex canciller, no cualquier ciudadano, haya menospreciado la obligación de cumplir con la ley ante la secretaría de la cual fue responsable durante casi 5 años. Parece soberbia del fallido candidato presidencial presumir en X la prueba de su grave falta: 6 fotografías ostentando la Orden de Morazán, cegado por el ansia de sobresalir mediáticamente. Al perder la ciudadanía mexicana, Ebrard no podría ser presidente de la República, ni senador, ni diputado, ni secretario de Estado, según lo ordenan los artículos 82, 58, 55 y 91 de la Constitución. El Diccionario de la Lengua Española define así al ciudadano: una persona considerada como miembro activo de un Estado, titular de derechos políticos y sometido a su vez a sus leyes. Quien no se somete a las leyes no puede ser ciudadano, esencial en una república, mientras que el súbdito se somete al monarca. Ebrard solo podría ser rehabilitado por la gracia del presidente. En la antigua Roma se perdía la ciudadanía por cometer traición y los traidores eran arrojados al vacío desde la roca Tarpeya. A gran salto, gran quebranto. De ser presidenciable, cayó en el incierto futuro de una senaduría. Hay políticos que actúan como en los viejos tiempos del PRI, cuando se creían dueños del país y ajustaban el cumplimiento de las leyes a sus ambiciones. La razón de este proceso de solicitar permiso se remonta al siglo XIX, en la lucha entre conservadores y liberales, quienes consideraban traidor a los conservadores por recibir títulos del extranjero. La Constitución de 1857, artículo 37, definía la pérdida de la ciudadanía por servir oficialmente al gobierno de otro país o admitir de él condecoraciones, títulos o funciones sin previa licencia del Congreso Federal. Ayer como hoy, la Constitución es muy clara. Ebrard aceptó una condecoración de un gobierno extranjero sin contar con el permiso y en ese momento dejó de ser ciudadano mexicano.
Así de fácil. Marcelo Ebrard, quien dejó de ser corcholata, ya nadie lo ve como presidenciable, pues se deja ir por lo que le dice la esposa, una extranjera, pues que no tiene ni mayor trascendencia en la política ni de Honduras ni de México. Es una mujer que al lado de Marcelo Ebrard han hecho mucho daño a México, en el sentido de meter las caravanas migrantes. Y estas caravanas ya resultaron ser para Estados Unidos la gran disputa partidista de demócratas y republicanos. Los demócratas están tratando de prostituir la frontera. Joe Biden y Mayorkas le dieron libre acceso a más de 8 millones de migrantes, que sabrá Dios en qué estado están, porque no están documentados, y eso es muy peligroso, porque muchos de ellos se han convertido en empleados de los carteles ya dentro de Estados Unidos. Están en laboratorios clandestinos haciendo droga, están distribuyéndolas clandestinamente en bares y tugurios, y las mujeres, algunas de ellas pobrecitas, prostituyéndose. Entonces, el escenario no es nada claro. Lo que sí está claro es que Donald Trump sigue siendo apoyado por muchos republicanos y lo van a esperar a que gane la presidencia y ponga en orden varios asuntos, pese a que le han hecho citas en corte para los tiempos en que va a ser la convención republicana. O sea, Biden quiere encarcelar a Trump a toda costa, pero ya a estas alturas del baile solamente lo están fortaleciendo los miembros del Partido Demócrata. Vamos a ver los videos y después una canción que le queda al grano a alguien por allí en México. Escúchenla y disfrútenla con el gran cantante de música mexicana, un gran mariachi, Joel Arrondo. Un abrazo, buenas noches, nos vemos y nos escuchamos mañana. Hasta entonces, gracias.
You cannot imagine what we spent an hour talking about. We're obviously taking a look at the product that Senator Langford negotiated with the Democratic President and the Democratic Senate, which has been endorsed by the Border Council, important union down by the border that supported President Trump in 2020. So that's the policy part of it. I think Senator Langford has done a remarkable job. However, we had a very robust discussion about whether or not this product could ever become law. And it's been made pretty clear to us by the Speaker that it will not become law. So I want to congratulate Senator Langford on a remarkable job negotiating with the other side, getting the support of the Border Council. But it looks to me, and to most of our members, is that we have no real chance here to make a law.
It looks like the January numbers are, as they come in, will represent the worst January ever on record when it comes to the southern border. That follows on December, which was not only the worst December on record ever, but the worst month ever in history on the southern border. Over 300,000 people apprehended trying to come across the border illegally in the month of December. Make no mistake about it. This is the Biden border crisis. This was totally avoidable. When he came into office, he reversed all the policies of the previous administration, and now we're seeing the results of that. It has been an absolute onslaught at our southern border. It is completely out of control, and it just was totally avoidable. So we've had, as the leader pointed out, a very robust discussion on the proposal that's out there, and I also want to compliment James Langford. He did a couple of really important things. He got the Democrats to acknowledge, and Biden to acknowledge, what a crisis and a disaster this is at the southern border, and he put forward a proposal, did the very best he could, worked as hard as he could, pushed the Democrats as far as he could to try and get something that ultimately would work and would allow us to regain operational control of the southern border. But there are pieces of this that our members don't believe, obviously, go far enough. And the administration, although they did make some concessions, were unwilling to do the things that are really going to be necessary to seal and to restore order to our southern border. So if and when this comes up for a vote, I think that could be sometime tomorrow, depending when Schumer triggers it. I would expect that the motion to proceed to the bill will fail.
Well, folks, tomorrow is exactly 1 month away from President Biden's State of the Union address to Congress and to the great United States of America. But what the heck have we seen from this president that is so great to talk about? One, we have skyrocketing debt among the American people. Americans have credit card debt now that is the greatest it has ever been in the history of the United States. Number two, something that we just talked about, 8.8 million illegal immigrants coming into the United States during President Biden's tenure, and he's telling Texas that they can't secure their own border. Wow, what an accomplishment. And we have over 169 attacks on U.S. service members in the Middle East, with very little response going after those that are responsible. So I'm really curious as to what President Biden is actually going to talk about during his State of the Union address. One thing I do know that would have been important to me and to many other members of Congress is that he actually submit a budget on time. He blew past the deadline to submit his budget. Something else that's important, the national security strategy. He blew past that deadline as well. What is President Biden doing? Actions speak louder than words for the American people. And President Biden is doing absolutely nothing to correct any of these issues for the American people. So what I am demanding that President Biden do is actually step up, provide us a budget, and provide us your national security strategy before you come over here and present to Congress your ideas or solutions. We've got to start with the basics, Mr. President, and by law you're required to give us a national security strategy and a budget. And I'm asking that he do that. Again, actions speak louder than words. Mr. President, you have a job to do. If you're not up for it, then let's move on. We need a new administration, folks.
Good afternoon, everybody. 3 years ago, the president took office on the beautiful Capitol steps. At that time, our immigration numbers were steady. but they've gone down measurably under President Trump. This president has had 3 years to put a policy forward that makes sense, that it results in a safer country with fewer illegals crossing our border, and every month it goes up and up and up. So the policy, I guess I'll go back to what Senator Ernst said. What is he doing? What has he done? On this, nothing. And he has presidential powers. We know he does, because they would be the same powers that President Trump had employed in his 4 years of his presidency when the numbers came down. So I would say that I was supportive of the issues of combining and looking at border security. And I too want to add my voice of thanks and really praise for James Langford. He has been a soldier of the greatest proportions for us. He's taken a lot of time away from his family and his state to really try to work with an administration who has shown and demonstrated over 3 years they have no interest. And so we talked about a little bit in the lunch about what's in there, but you know there's a lot that's not in there that the Democrats would not accede to, would not agree to, would not even look at. And so now we're in a situation where people haven't had enough time to read the bill, it is inadequate, and so I agree with our whip. I don't think this will pass, and I think we need to move on.
We weren't here on Groundhog Day, but I was having some Jimmy Carter flashbacks on Groundhog Day, because you start looking at the numbers. Joe Biden's approval numbers are now the worst of any president, even Jimmy Carter. In fact, you have to go back 75 years to find a president with lower approval numbers. NBC had him at 37% this past week. Gallup at 39%. You step back and look at why. Why have the American people weighed in on this presidency in a very significant way, giving him the lowest marks of any president this time, his administration, in 75 years? Look, President Biden inherited a secure border. The numbers, as we pointed out earlier, were in pretty good shape. He made it worse on day one. This is cause and effect. It wasn't like he inherited a crisis on the southern border. He inherited numbers that were some of the lowest we'd seen in many, many years. He made it worse by reversing policies that President Trump put in place. Streaming illegals coming across, of course, the terror threat to our country. We've talked about it here almost every week. He inherited record job growth, record job increases, record wage increases. He made it worse working with Senate Democrats, unleashing a massive $1.9 trillion stimulus bill in early 23 at a time when we knew darn well this was going to create problems for this economy. He inherited a Middle East that was pretty quiet, thanks in large part to President Trump and the Abraham Accords, which have kind of been forgotten about. He's made it worse with his disastrous Afghanistan pullout, the spy balloon fiasco, projecting American weakness. The result, tragically, we had dead Americans in Afghanistan, and most recently an Iranian drone strike that killed 3. Let's be clear, President Biden's not up to the job. Our Senate Democrats have been complicit in that regard, but the American people are smart. They recognize incompetency when they see it, hence Biden leading the race to the bottom on approval ratings.
Leader McConnell. Senator Ted Cruz had a press conference around noon today, said that you shouldn't have even tried to negotiate with Democrats, said this bill was designed to fail, and that it's time for you to step down as GOP leader. What's your response to that?
I think we can all agree that Senator Cruz is not a bad.
Leader McConnell. The president came out and he pointedly put the blame on Donald Trump. He said it is Donald Trump is to blame for the failure of this bill. Was Trump's opposition too much for you to overcome?
Well, I've said repeatedly every month I'm not going to get into comments about the race for the presidency of Republicans. I think in the end, even though the product was approved by the Border Council that endorsed President Trump. Most of our members feel that we're not going to be able to make a law here. And if we're not going to be able to make a law, they're reluctant to go forward. There are other parts of this supplemental that are extremely important as well. Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. We still, in my view, ought to tackle the rest of it because it's important. Not that the border isn't important, but we can't get an outcome. So that's where I think we ought to head, and it's up to Senator Schumer to decide how to repackage this if, in fact, we don't go on to it.
Leader McConnell, you know, Senator Schumer says that he worked extensively with you on this package. What do you say to your colleagues who said that you misread your conference in helping to craft this border provisions?
I followed the instructions of my conference, who were insisting that we tackle this in October. I mean, it's actually our side that wanted to tackle the border issue. We started it. Obviously, with a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate, our negotiators had to deal with them. And James Langford, under those situations, did a remarkable job to pick off the Border Council, which supported President Trump. Certainly underscores that it was a quality product that that particular union felt would make progress toward making things better. But as I said earlier, things have changed over the last 4 months, and it's been made perfectly clear by the Speaker that he wouldn't take it up even if we sent it to him. And so I think that's probably why most of our members think we ought to have opposition tomorrow. We'll see.
La Rondo en los mejores eventos de motos BMW. ¡Ánimo, raza!
Con tanta dulzura y con tanta ternura, que hubiera sido antes, y así ya no tendría estas ganas de rogar mi
Durán Rosillo te saluda y los saluda a todos ustedes, su amiga María Celeste Raraz, para invitarlos a que se suscriban a mi canal de YouTube, María Celeste Raraz, tal como mi nombre, donde les informo todas las semanas sobre entrevistas que tienen un tema que ayuda a mejorarnos como personas y de paso son interesantes. Las pueden encontrar en mi canal de YouTube, así que los espero. Y se suscriben gratis.
Escuchaste el análisis de la noticia, transparente como el agua, con el periodista Francisco Durán Rosillo.